The morning before you wake, before dawn, as you always do, to the sound of roosters and your husband's gentle breathing beside you. The straw mattress crackles as you rise. You don't know it yet, but this is one of the last mornings your world will ever feel safe. The air is cool against your skin as you pull your woolen shift over your linen underdress, your fingers working quickly in the darkness. Your husband, Thomas, stirs but doesn't wake. He worked late yesterday, helping repair the miller's wheel, and you let him rest a few moments longer. Outside, the village is beginning its ancient rhythm, the same rhythm your mother knew, and her mother before her, stretching back into time beyond memory. You step carefully over your 3 children sleeping near the hearth. Margaret, your eldest at 9, has one arm thrown over her little brother John. Baby Anne sleeps in her wooden cradle, her tiny fist curled near her mouth. The embers from last night's fire still glow faintly, and you kneel to coax them back to life, adding kindling with practiced ease. The smoke curls upward, finding its way through the hole in the thatched roof. This cottage is your entire world in many ways. One room, dirt floor, covered with rushes, you replace every few weeks, walls of wattle and daub that you repair each spring. The smell is familiar, comforting even smoke and bodies, and the earthy scent of the dried herbs hanging from the rafters. Thyme and lavender from the small garden plot behind the house. Your mother taught you which plants to grow, which ones help with fever, which ones make the pottage taste less like turnips and desperation. Outside, you can hear old Agnes already moving about. She's always first to the well, claims it's because her bones ache too much to let her sleep past cockcrow. You suspect she simply likes having the village to herself for a few quiet moments. You'll see her soon enough when you go to draw water. The bread needs making. You pull the wooden bowl toward you, the one Thomas carved when you were first married 7 years ago. Your hands know this work without thinking flour, ground from the Lord's grain, the portion you're allowed to keep after giving him his due. Water from yesterday's trip to the well, a bit of the leaven you keep going in the clay pot, passed from batch to batch, a living thing in its way, salt, precious and carefully measured. Your hands work the dough, pushing and folding, pushing and folding. There's a meditation in this, a rhythm that matches your breathing. Through the gaps in the shutters, you can see the sky beginning to lighten, that deep blue that comes just before sunrise. Soon Thomas will wake, and the children and the cottage will fill with noise and movement. But for now, there's just this, your hands in the dough, the fire crackling, the day unfolding exactly as it should. You think about the work ahead. The vegetable garden needs weeding, it always needs weeding. There are eggs to collect, if the hens have been generous. Margaret is old enough now to help with the spinning, though she'd rather be running wild with the other village children. You'll need to walk to the far field today, where Thomas and the other men are bringing in the early hay. They'll want bread and cheese and ale brought to them at midday. It's June 1348, and the world feels abundant. The spring rains were good this year. The crops are growing well. There was a wedding last week, the baker's daughter married to a young man from the next village, and everyone danced and drank and celebrated. Father Peter gave a long blessing, as he always does, and told stories about saints and miracles. Your feet still ache a little from the dancing. You shape the dough into 2 loaves and set them near the fire to rise, covering them with a clean cloth. Thomas is stirring now, sitting up and running his hands through his hair. He smiles at you, that slow smile that made you love him all those years ago when you were both barely older than Margaret is now. "Good morning, wife," he says quietly, so as not to wake the children yet. "Good morning, husband," you reply, and there's warmth in it. Genuine affection worn smooth by years of sharing this small life together. He pulls on his tunic, splashes water on his face from the bucket near the door. You pour him some ale from the jug, small beer, weak enough for children, but enough to fortify him for the day's work. He drinks it, standing, looking out at the emerging day. "I'll be in the north field today," he tells you. "Should be back by sundown." You nod. This is the conversation you have most mornings, the ordinary exchange of information that keeps a household running. He'll tell you about the work, you'll tell him about the children, and life will continue as it always has. Margaret wakes next, yawning and stretching. She's at that age where she's not quite a child anymore, but not yet a woman. In a few years, you'll be thinking about marriage for her, about which families might be interested in an alliance. The thought makes your chest tight to her, not ready to let her go yet. But that's the way of things. Your own mother surely felt the same. "Mama, I'm hungry," Margaret says, and you smile because of course she is. Children are always hungry. "The bread isn't ready yet. Have some pottage from last night." She makes a face, but goes to the pot hanging over the fire, now warming again. The pottage is thick with yesterday's vegetables and a bit of bacon fat. Not fancy, but filling. This is what life tastes like for people like you, simple, repetitive, but sustaining. John wakes next. Then the baby. And suddenly the cottage is full of noise and motion. You nurse Anne while keeping one eye on John, who at 4 years old has a talent for finding trouble. Thomas finishes his ale, kisses you on the forehead, musses John's hair, and heads out to join the other men. Through the open door, you can see the village coming to life. Smoke rises from other cottages. You can hear the blacksmith's hammer already ringing. He starts early, always has. The pigs are rooting in the street. Someone's dog is barking. It's the same scene that's played out here for generations. Will play out for generations to come, or so you think. You don't know that in the ports to the south, ships have been arriving from strange lands, carrying more than spices and silk. You don't know that in Bristol and Southampton, people have started dying in ways that make no sense, with swellings black as sin and fever that burns like hellfire. You don't know that the thing traveling toward your village has already killed millions, has emptied entire cities, has left a trail of mass graves across continents. You don't know any of this because news travels slowly, and besides, there are always rumors of trouble somewhere. The world beyond your village is vast and frightening and largely irrelevant to your daily life. What matters is here, these children, this husband, this bread rising by the fire. This good June morning in 1348, you step outside to check on the hens, and the morning air is sweet and clean. The sun is fully up now, golden light spilling across the fields. You can see other women emerging from their cottages, heading to the well, calling greetings to each other. There's Mary with her new baby. There's Joan, already arguing with her daughter about something. There's old Agnes, as predicted, settling herself on the bench outside her cottage with her spinning dot. Everything is exactly as it should be. Everything is normal and familiar and safe. You have no idea that everything is about to change forever. Section 2. The First Whispers. 1,500 words. The first whispers come on a Sunday. 3 weeks after that peaceful June morning, you're in church, standing with the other women on the left side of the nave while the men stand on the right. Baby Anne is fussing in your arms, and you rock her gently, hoping she won't disturb Father Peter's sermon. The church is dim and cool, smelling of incense and the bodies of the entire village packed together. The walls are painted with scenes of heaven and hell, and you've spent many a service studying them, especially the hell portions, which are considerably more detailed and creative than heaven. Father Peter is older than anyone can remember, thin as a stick, with a voice that quavers when he speaks. But today there's something different in his tone, something tight. He's talking about prayer, about the importance of confession, about keeping your soul clean and ready. This isn't unusual. He often speaks of death and judgment. But then he says something that makes you pay closer attention. We must pray for our brothers and sisters in the southern towns, he says, his hands gripping the sides of the pulpit. Word has reached me of a great sickness spreading there, a pestilence sent, perhaps, as punishment for sin. We must examine our own hearts and repent, lest God's wrath find us as well. A murmur runs through the congregation. You glance at Thomas, who's frowning slightly. Sickness in the south, that could mean anything. There are always fevers, always some flux or another killing people. Last winter, 3 children in the village died of a coughing sickness. These things happen. God takes the old and the young, and you accept it because what choice do you have? After the service, the women cluster outside, as they always do, sharing gossip and news, while the men head toward the alehouse. You shift Anne to your other hip and listen as Mary leans in close, her voice low and excited. My brother was at the market in the town last week, she says. He spoke to a merchant who'd come from Bristol. The man said, people are dying. They're in numbers he's never seen. Whole families gone in days. They can't bury them fast enough. Joan crosses herself. God have mercy. What kind of sickness? Fever, Mary says, and swellings, black ones, in the neck and under the arms. The first whispers come on a Sunday. 3 weeks after that peaceful June morning, you're in church, standing with the other women on the left side of the nave, while the men stand on the right. Baby Anne is fussing in your arms, and you rock her gently, hoping she won't disturb Father Peter's sermon. The church is dim and cool, smelling of incense and the bodies of the entire village packed together. The walls are painted with scenes of heaven and hell, and you've spent many a service studying them, especially the hell portions, which are considerably more detailed and creative than heaven. Father Peter is older than anyone can remember, thin as a stick, with a voice that quavers when he speaks. But today there's something different in his tone, something tight. He's talking about prayer, about the importance of confession, about keeping your soul clean and ready. This isn't unusual. He often speaks of death and judgment, but then he says something that makes you pay closer attention. We must pray for our brothers and sisters in the southern towns, he says, his hands gripping the sides of the pulpit. Word has reached me of a great sickness spreading there, a pestilence sent, perhaps, as punishment for sin. We must examine our own hearts and repent, lest God's wrath find us as well. A murmur runs through the congregation. You glance at Thomas, who's frowning slightly. Sickness in the south. That could mean anything. There are always fevers, always some flux or another killing people. Last winter, 3 children in the village died of a coughing sickness. These things happen. God takes the old and the young, and you accept it, because what choice do you have? After the service, the women cluster outside, as they always do, sharing gossip and news, while the men head toward the ale house. You shift Anne to your other hip and listen as Mary leans in close, her voice low and excited. My brother was at the market in the town last week, she says. He spoke to a merchant who'd come from Bristol. The man said people are dying there in numbers he's never seen. Whole families gone in days. They can't bury them fast enough. Joan crosses herself. God have mercy. What kind of sickness? Fever, Mary says, and swellings, black ones, in the neck and under the arms. They say the pain is terrible. They say once you get the swellings, you're dead within 3 days. You feel a small cold finger of fear touch your spine, but you push it away. Bristol is far. 2 days' walk at least, maybe more. And merchants always exaggerate. Everyone knows that. They like to make everything sound dramatic and strange. Could be anything, you say, trying to sound sensible. Remember 2 summers ago, when everyone said there was a dragon in the woods near Ashford? Turned out to be a diseased cow. The women laugh, tension breaking. Yes, that's right. People panic over nothing all the time. Still, over the next few days, you notice the talk continuing. At the well, in the fields, wherever women gather, the whispers persist. Someone's cousin knows someone who saw the sick people in Southampton. Someone else heard the king himself has fled London. The stories grow with each telling, becoming more elaborate and terrifying. But life continues. What else can you do? The hay still needs cutting. The bread still needs baking. The children still need feeding and scolding and loving. You can't stop living because of rumors from distant towns. Then, on a warm afternoon in July, a traveler passes through the village. He's gaunt and wild-eyed, leading a thin horse. He stops at the well to water the animal, and a crowd gathers because travelers are always interesting, always bring news from the wider world. Where are you coming from? Someone asks. Oxford, the man says. His voice is rough, like he's been crying or hasn't spoken in days, or what's left of it. I'm going north, far north, Scotland, maybe, or beyond. What do you mean, what's left of it? Thomas asks. He's there with the other men, taking a break from the field work. The traveler looks at him, and you can see genuine fear in the man's eyes. Real terror, not the kind you can dismiss as exaggeration. The death, he says simply, it's there. It's everywhere in the South now. Oxford, London, Winchester, Bristol, all of them burning with fever. I've seen things. He trails off, shakes his head. I've seen things I won't speak of. Streets full of corpses, houses marked with crosses, the clergy dying as fast as everyone else. I'm getting out while I can. He takes his horse and leaves quickly, as if staying even a few minutes might doom him. After he's gone, the villagers stand in uncomfortable silence. This wasn't merchant gossip or third-hand rumor. This was a man who'd seen something that put that look in his eyes. That night, Father Peter calls a special prayer service. The church is packed, everyone seeking reassurance or explanation, or just the comfort of being together. The old priest leads the prayers in Latin that most of you don't understand, but the meaning is clear enough. Protect us. Lord, keep this evil away from us. You hold Margaret's hand on one side and Thomas's on the other. John is pressed against your legs, unusually quiet, picking up on the fear in the adults around him. Baby Anne is mercifully asleep in the cloth sling across your chest. You pray with everyone else, adding your own desperate bargaining to God. Keep my children safe. Keep Thomas safe. I'll be better, I promise. I'll complain less about the work, about the winter cold. Just keep them safe. But even as you pray, doubt creeps in. Because if this sickness is God's punishment, as Father Peter suggests, then what sin could be so terrible that it deserves this? You've seen genuine evil in your life. The miller who beats his wife, the Lord's steward who takes bribes, the man to villages over who was caught stealing from the church. But your village, your neighbors, these are ordinary people living ordinary lives, trying their best, failing sometimes as humans do, but not wicked, not deserving of plague, unless that's not how it works. Unless God's justice is not the kind you can understand or predict or bargain with, the days that follow are strange. Everyone goes about their work because they must, but there's a tension underneath everything now. People watch each other for signs of sickness. A cough draws stares. Someone mentions feeling tired, and others edge away. The market in town is smaller than usual. People are staying close to home. Some families start stockpiling food just in case. But then, on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other terrible day, you notice something that makes your blood run cold. Your neighbor across the lane, Emitha 1, with 4 children and a husband who drinks too much, hasn't come out of her cottage. Her chickens are making a fuss, unfed. Her door is closed, which is unusual. Everyone keeps their doors open in summer. You hesitate, then walk over and knock gently. Emma, are you well? No answer. You knock again, harder. Emma, finally, a weak voice from inside. Don't come in, please. Don't come in. Your hand freezes on the door. What's wrong? Are you sick? A long pause. Then, so quietly you almost don't hear it, the swellings. I have the swellings. And my youngest, little Thomas. Keep away from us. God, have mercy. Keep away. You step back from the door as if it's on fire. Your heart is pounding so hard you can hear it in your ears. She has the swellings, which means it's here. The thing everyone has been whispering about, fearing, praying against. It's here. In your village, right across the lane from your own cottage. You look around wildly. Other neighbors are emerging, drawn by Emma's raised voice. They look at you with questions in their eyes. And you don't want to be the one to say it. Don't want to be the one who confirms that the nightmare has arrived. But then, on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other terrible day, you notice the first sign on your eldest daughter. No, wait, not yet. That comes later. For now, you're standing outside Emma's door, and you know that everything has changed. The whispers were true. The traveler's terror was justified. Death has found its way to your small village, your safe, ordinary world, and nothing will ever be the same again. The arrivalima dies 2 days after you hear her voice through the closed door. Her husband finds her in the morning, already cold, the youngest child dead beside her. The other 3 children are showing the swellings too. Within a week, that entire household is gone. 6 people, erased like they were never there. Their cottage stands empty, the door hanging open. Chickens scattered to neighboring yards because no one wants to go inside to claim them properly. The village rev, the man elected to handle village affairs. The cottage burned. No one argues. You stand with the other villagers and watch the flames consume the wattle and daub, the thatched roof collapsing in a shower of sparks. The smoke rises black and thick, and you wonder if burning will actually help, or if the sickness is already spreading, invisible, unstoppable. Father Peter conducts a brief service. 6 bodies in one grave, wrapped in whatever cloth their terrified neighbors could spare. The priest's hands shake as he makes the sign of the cross. You notice he stands farther back than usual, doesn't touch the body. You don't blame him. Everyone is afraid. And then, like water seeping through a cracked dam, the sickness spreads. Within 2 weeks, 15 people are dead. Within a month, 40. Your village only has about 200 souls to begin with. You can do the arithmetic, even though you've never been taught formal numbers. You can see it happening around you, familiar faces disappearing, cottages going dark, children orphaned and taken in by relatives who might themselves be sick by next week. The pattern is always the same. First, the fever. A person complains of feeling tired, achy. You think maybe it's just the normal tiredness of working in the fields of life's hard labor. But then the fever climbs, fast and vicious. Their skin grows hot to the touch, so hot it seems impossible a body could contain such heat and live. Then the swellings appear black, hard lumps in the neck, under the arms, in the groin. Bubo's Father Peter calls them, using a word you've never heard before but will never forget. The pain, people say, is unimaginable. The sick scream and thrash. Some go mad with it, raving about demons and hellfire. Some grow very quiet, turning their faces to the wall, and then, usually within 3 or 4 days of the first fever, they die. Not everyone, a few survive, though no one understands why, but most die. Almost all die. You become grimly familiar with the signs. You learn to watch for that particular glassiness in someone's eyes. The way they move a little too slowly, touch their neck or armpit with a worried expression. You learn to recognize the smell to the sick, have a particular odor, sweet and rotten at once. Death has a smell, and it's everywhere now. The normal rhythms of village life fracture and collapse. The harvest work slows, then stops in many fields. Why bring in hay when you might be dead before winter? Why repair a roof when your whole family might be in the ground by autumn? Some people become frantic, desperately working to finish tasks, settle debts, make peace with old enemies. Others simply give up, sitting in their cottages, waiting for the sickness to find them. The church fills every day now. Father Peter conducts last rites so often he's hoarse from the constant prayers. His own hands have begun to tremble uncontrollably, whether from exhaustion or fear, or the beginnings of fever. You can't tell. People confess sins loudly, publicly, hoping God will hear and spare them. The baker admits to watering down his flour. The blacksmith confesses to adultery with a woman 3 villages away. Everyone is desperate to be right with God before the swellings come. But confession doesn't seem to help. The pious Father Peter himself takes sick in early August. You hear about it from Joan, who heard it from the priest's housekeeper. For 3 days, the whole village prays for him, because surely God won't take his own servant. Surely the priest's prayers for others will be answered for himself. He dies on the 4th day. After that, you have no priest at all. No one to hear confession, to give last rites, to conduct proper burials. The nearest town might send a replacement, but the nearest town is dealing with its own catastrophe. You're on your own. The social bonds that held your village together begin to fray. Old Agnes, who was always first to help anyone in need, refuses to leave her cottage. She pushes food under her door when someone brings it, won't even open it wide enough to see who's there. You understand why her grandson died last week, and she's terrified. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less when she won't even speak to you through the door. Some people run. The miller packs his family onto a cart in the middle of the night and heads north, abandoning the mill that's been in his family for 3 generations. The Lord's bailiff leaves too, though he at least has the authority to claim he's going to seek help or report to his master. Others want to flee but have nowhere to go. Where would you run to? Every town, every village, every city in England is dealing with the same horror. There's nowhere safe to hide. And there are ugly moments too, things you'll be ashamed of later, if there is a later. When Robert the carpenter falls sick, no one will go near his family. His wife screams from the doorway, begging someone to help her move her husband to the bed. He's too heavy for her alone. You stand with the other women and do nothing. You tell yourself you're protecting your children, that going in there would be suicide. But you'll remember the sound of her screaming for the rest of your life. The village reeve tries to maintain order, but even he seems lost. He posts notices about burning contaminated houses, about reporting sickness immediately, about maintaining quarantine. But how do you quarantine a village where everyone lives on top of each other, shares wells and tools and air? The rules are meaningless, and everyone knows it. You develop strange new habits. You avoid touching anyone outside your immediate family. When you must go to the well, you go when you know it will be empty, even if it means carrying water in the dark. You wash your hands compulsively with cold water and the harsh soap you make from ash and fat. You hang bundles of herbs everywhere, rosemary and lavender, and anything else that smells strong, hoping the scent will ward off the miasma you're sure carries the disease. At night, you lie awake, listening for the sound of coughing from your children, listening for Thomas to complain of feeling tired or achy, listening for the terrible sounds from neighboring cottages, screaming, the praying, the eventually silence. Sleep becomes something that happens to you by accident, your body shutting down from exhaustion rather than any sense of peace. The mass graves multiply. The churchyard is full, so they dig new pits in the fields beyond the village. Bodies are wrapped in whatever cloth can be spared. No more individual shrouds, no more careful preparation. Just bodies stacked like firewood, covered with lime when someone remembers. Then earth shoveled over quickly by men with cloths tied over their faces. You make a terrible calculation one night. lying beside Thomas in the dark. If half the village has died already, and the sickness shows no sign of slowing, how long before it finds your cottage? You have 5 people in your household. What are the odds all 5 survive? What are the odds any survive? Thomas reaches for your hand in the darkness. His palm is warm and dry and alive. For now, he's alive. You're alive. The children sleeping near the hearth are alive. You hold on to that thought like a prayer, like a candle in a vast darkness. Tomorrow you'll wake and check each child for fever. You'll make bread if there's flour left. You'll carry water and try not to look at the empty cottages. You'll survive another day in this new world where death walks freely through your village, taking who it pleases, leaving the rest of you to wonder when your turn will come. Daily life in the shadow of death still have to live. That's the terrible truth no one talks about in stories of plague and catastrophe. Even while death walks through your village, claiming neighbor after neighbor, you still have to wake up and make bread. The children still need feeding. The chickens still need tending. Life, in its relentless, mundane way, continues. Margaret asks you one morning why she has to practice her spinning when everyone is dying anyway. You slap her knot hard, but sharp enough to shock both of you. Then you pull her close and hold her tight, your face pressed into her hair, and whisper that you're sorry. You're so sorry, but she has to keep learning, keep working, because you have to believe there will be a future where these skills matter. You have to believe it, or you'll go mad. The daily routines become both meaningless and essential. You wake before dawn, just as you always have. You coax the fire back to life, trying to conserve fuel, because who knows when you'll be able to get more. The woodcutter died 3 weeks ago, and his sons are too sick to work. You make do with what you have, burning slower, keeping the fire smaller. The cottage is chilly, even in summer now, but that's the least of your worries. Bread is harder to make these days. The miller is gone, and his mill stands idle. Some women have taken to grinding their own grain with handstones, the way their grandmothers did. It's back-breaking work, and the flour comes out, coarse and full of bits of stone that crack your teeth. But it's flour, and you're grateful for it. You mix it with more water than before, stretching what you have. The loaves come out dense and heavy, but they fill bellies. Thomas still goes out to the fields most days, though fewer men join him now. Half the village workforce is dead or dying. The crops are growing wild in places, unharvested, rotting where they stand. Your husband comes home exhausted, covered in dirt and sweat, and you can see the fear in his eyes even though he tries to hide it. Every day in the fields means exposure to other men, any of whom might be carrying the sickness. But if they don't work, you'll all starve this winter, assuming you live that long. You've become expert at examining your children. Every morning, you check them with hands that try not to shake. You feel their foreheads for fever. You make them lift their arms so you can check for swellings in their armpits. You peer at their necks, looking for any sign of the telltale buboes. They submit to this inspection with the patience of children who've learned that the world is frightening and unpredictable. So far, they're healthy. Thank God. Thank all the saints. Thank whatever force in the universe might be listening so far. Your children are healthy. But every day that remains true feels like borrowed time. The village has developed strange new customs, unspoken rules everyone follows. You don't touch anyone outside your household. When you must speak to someone, you stand far apart, conversation shouted across several feet of space. You don't share food, don't share cups or bowls or tools. If someone drops something near you, you don't pick it up for them. Everything might be contaminated. Everyone might be infected. At the well, women queue in a line, each waiting for the person ahead to finish and move away before approaching. You remember when gathering water was a social time, full of gossip and laughter, and the easy companionship of women doing the same work. Now it's silent and tense, everyone avoiding everyone else's eyes. Mary still comes to the well, though her husband and 2 of her children are dead. She looks like a ghost herself now, hollow-eyed and thin. You want to comfort her, but you don't dare get close enough. The question that haunts you constantly is, what do you do when someone near you falls sick? It's not hypothetical anymore. It's a practical problem you might face any day. If Margaret develops a fever, do you isolate her from John and baby Anne? How would you even do that in your one-room cottage? If Thomas falls ill, do you nurse him and risk bringing the sickness to yourself and the children? Or do you keep your distance and let him suffer alone? You've seen both choices made in your village. Joan stayed with her daughter until the end, holding her hand, wiping her fevered brow, whispering prayers and love. Joan died 2 days after her daughter. Their neighbor, William, locked his sick wife in the sleeping loft and refused to go near her. She screamed for water, screamed for help, screamed until her voice gave out. She died alone up there, and William is still alive, haunted and hated by everyone who heard those screams. Which choice is right? Which choice could you live with? The worst part is the helplessness. You know herbs your mother taught you well. You know which plants help with fever, which ones ease pain, which ones calm the stomach. But none of them work against this. You've tried everything. Willow bark for fever, chamomile for calm, poultices of bread mold on the swellings. Nothing helps. The sick die anyway, and all your knowledge is useless. Some people have turned to more desperate measures. Old Agnes, before she locked herself away, suggested bleeding. She said, bad humors cause sickness, so removing blood removes the disease. Robert's wife tried it, cutting her husband's arm and letting the blood flow into a bowl. He died the same day, probably faster than he would have otherwise. Others try prayer vigils, fasting, wearing holy relics. A woman from the next village came through selling vials of water, supposedly blessed by a saint's bones. People paid good coin for it, drank it desperately. It did nothing. Father Peter's replacement finally arrives in September, a young priest from the town, nervous and pale. He lasts 2 weeks before the fever takes him. After that, no one else comes. Why would they? It's a death sentence, and everyone knows it. You conduct your own services now. The villagers gathering in the church to recite the prayers you remember, stumbling over the Latin words. It feels hollow without a proper priest, but it's something. You need something to hold onto. The social fabric of the village continues to deteriorate in ways you never imagined. The blacksmith's widow remarries barely a week after her husband's death. She needs a man to work the forge, and the cooper needs a woman to keep his house. It's practical, not romantic, and no one judges. Normal propriety seems absurd when death is everywhere. There's no time for proper mourning, proper courtship, proper anything. stranger still. Some people seem to give up on propriety entirely. You hear stories, probably exaggerated, but who knows any more of people drinking and dancing, of couples coupling who aren't married, of general debauchery. If we're all going to die anyway, why not enjoy what time is left? You don't understand this response. Your own instinct is to hold tighter to order and routine, to maintain the structures that make you human. But you can't judge those who choose differently. Everyone is coping however they can. Money becomes almost meaningless. What good is coin when there's nothing to buy and no one to buy it from? The marketplace is abandoned. The few shops that existed are closed or their owners dead. People barter now bread for eggs, labor for vegetables from someone's garden. You trade some of your spinning for salt, precious salt that you hoard like treasure. The economy of your village, never complex to begin with, has simplified to the most basic exchanges of survival. And yet, somehow, you keep going. You wake up, you check the children, you make bread, you carry water, you spin wool, because winter will come if you live to see it tanned. You'll need warm clothing. Thomas works the fields. The surviving villagers nod to each other from safe distances. Life continues because stopping isn't an option. At night, you hold Thomas close and try not to think about tomorrow. His body is warm and solid against yours, proof that he's still here, still alive. You listen to the children breathing in the darkness. Margaret's deep, steady breaths. John's little snuffles. Baby Anne's soft sighs. These sounds are everything. They're the reason you keep getting up, keep going through the motions. Keep hoping against hope that maybe your family will be among the ones who survive. You don't let yourself think about what you would do if you lost them. That's a darkness too deep to contemplate and still maintain sanity. Instead, you focus on today, just today. You made it through another day, and everyone you love is still breathing. Tomorrow, you'll do it again, and the day after that, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, if necessary. You'll survive this. But then, on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other terrible day, you notice the first sign on your eldest daughter, and your entire world narrows to a single point of horror that makes everything else you've endured seem like preparation for this moment. When it comes home, Margaret complains that her neck hurts. It's such a small thing, such an ordinary complaint. Children always have aches and pains. She probably slept wrong. She probably strained something playing with the other children, though there are so few children left to play with now. You tell her it's nothing. Rub her neck gently. Send her to help with the spinning. But your hands were shaking when you touched her. You felt it, the heat. Just a little warmth, barely noticeable. Probably nothing. Probably your imagination. Probably the fear that's been eating at you for months, finally manifesting in false alarms and paranoia an hour later. She puts down her spindle and says she's tired. Your heart stops. You cross the cottage in 3 steps, press your palm to her forehead. She's hot, definitely hot now, hotter than she was before. The fever is climbing. Margaret, you say, trying to keep your voice calm, trying not to let her see your terror. Let me see your neck. She lifts her chin obediently, and there, just there, below her jaw on the left side, you can see it. A small swelling, barely visible yet, but you can feel it when you touch it gently, hard. Not her, not Margaret. Anyone but your children. You've been praying for months. Take anyone but my children. Take me if you must. Take Thomas. Take whoever you want. But please God, please not my children. But God isn't listening. Or he's listening and saying no. Or maybe there's no God at all. Just random chaos and death that takes whoever it pleases without reason or mercy, Mama. Margaret's voice is small, frightened. She sees your face, sees the horror you can't hide. Mama, what is it? You pull her close, hold her tight against your chest. She's 9 years old. 9 years of life. 9 years of watching her grow from a tiny baby to this bright, stubborn, beautiful girl who argues with you about chores and makes up songs when she thinks no one is listening. 9 years, and now maybe only days left. It's all right, you lie. You lie so completely, so desperately. You're going to be all right. Thomas comes home to find you sitting on the floor with Margaret in your arms, rocking her like you did when she was a baby. He takes one look at your face and knows. You see him age 10 years in that moment. You see his shoulders slump, his face go gray. But then he straightens, sets his jaw, becomes the strong one because one of you has to be. I'll make a pallet by the fire, he says quietly. Keep her warm. You want to scream at him. What good will keeping her warm do? What good will any of it do? But you don't, because he needs to do something, needs to feel like he's helping. So you nod, and together you make Margaret comfortable by the fire, piling on blankets even though she's burning with fever. The next decision tears you apart. John and baby Andu, you keep them here, in the same room with their sick sister. Or do you send them away? But where? To whom? Every household in the village is either dead, dying, or desperately trying to protect their own. No one will take your children, and you can't blame them. You keep them close, but try to maintain distance. You make John sleep as far from Margaret as possible in the tiny cottage. You hold Anne constantly, as if your arms can shield her from the sickness that's already in the room with you. It's futile, probably. If Margaret has it, you've all been exposed, but you have to try. Margaret gets worse quickly. The fever climbs until she's delirious, thrashing and crying out for you even when you're right there beside her. The swelling on her neck grows larger, turning purple-black, hard as stone. Others appear under her arms, in her groin. She whimpers when you try to touch them. The pain clearly excruciating. You try everything you know, even though you know it won't work. Cool cloths on her forehead. Chamomile tea when she can swallow. Prayers, so many prayers. You pray to God, to Mary, to every saint whose name you can remember. You promise anything, everything. You'll be better. You'll never complain again. You'll serve the church for the rest of your life. Just save her, please. Just save my little girl. Thomas sits with you through the long night, both of you watching Margaret's labored breathing. Sometimes he holds your hand. Sometimes you hold his. Mostly you just sit in shared silence, bearing witness to this unbearable thing. Neighbors avoid your cottage now. You see them cross to the other side of the lane when they pass. A few brave souls, or perhaps those who've already lost everything and have nothing left to fear, leave food by your door. Bread, some eggs, a bit of cheese. You're grateful, though you have no appetite. You force yourself to eat anyway, for the other children, for Thomas. You have to keep your strength. On the second day, Margaret starts coughing, and there's blood in it. Bright red blood that stains the cloth you hold to her mouth. This is new, a symptom you haven't seen in the other sick villagers. Or maybe you just weren't close enough to them to notice. You wonder, in a distant corner of your mind that's still capable of analytical thought, whether different people show different symptoms, whether the sickness manifests uniquely in each body it destroys. She calls for you constantly, Mama, Mama, even when you're right there, holding her hand, stroking her hair. Mama, it hurts. Make it stop. Please make it stop. And you can't. That's the worst part. You're her mother. You're supposed to protect her, heal her, make everything better. That's what mothers do. But you're helpless. Completely, utterly helpless. All you can do is hold her hand and tell her you love her and try to give her sips of water. When she can manage to swallow, Thomas breaks on the third day. You find him outside the cottage, sitting in the dirt with his head in his hands, his whole body shaking with sobs. You sit beside him, put your arm around his shoulders. You don't tell him it will be all right, because it won't be. You just sit with him in his grief, in your shared grief, and let him cry. I can't lose her, he says, his voice raw. She's my little girl. My firstborn. I can't. I know. Inside the cottage, Margaret screams. You both rush in to find her convulsing, her back arched, foam at her lips. You hold her down as gently as you can, trying to keep her from hurting herself. John is crying in the corner, terrified. Baby Anne is wailing. The cottage is full of screaming and crying and the smell of sickness and fear. And then, as suddenly as it started, Margaret goes still. Her eyes flutter open clear for the first time in days. She looks right at you, really sees you, and she smiles. A small, tired smile. Mama, she says quietly. I love you, Mama. I love you too, sweetheart, you manage to say. So much more than anything. I'm sleepy, she murmurs. Her eyes drift closed. You hold her as her breathing slows. Each breath comes farther apart from the last. You count them, knowing you're counting down to the end. 10 breaths, 9, 8, 7. You want to tell her to keep breathing, to fight, to stay with you. But she's so tired. She's been fighting for 3 days, and she's only 9 years old. And she's so tired. 3 breaths, 2, 1, nothing. You sit there holding your daughter's body, and the sound that comes out of you doesn't seem human. It's grief made audible, pain given voice. Thomas's arms come round you both, and he's making the same sound. And somewhere John is crying, and Anne is crying, and the whole cottage is crying. Margaret is dead, your firstborn child. Your beautiful girl who loved to sing and hated spinning and wanted to know why the sky was blue and dreamed of seeing the ocean someday. She's gone, just gone, like snuffing out a candle. All that life, that personality, that potential erased. You don't know how long you sit there. Time loses meaning. Eventually, Thomas gently takes Margaret from your arms. He wraps her in the good cloth, the cloth you were saving for. You don't even remember what you were saving it for. Nothing matters now. He carries her outside, and you follow on numb legs. There's no priest to say prayers, no one to conduct a proper service. The mass graves are full, and you can't bear the thought of throwing her in with strangers. Thomas digs a grave in the small plot behind your cottage, the plot where you grow vegetables. He digs deep while you sit and watch, holding Anne, keeping John close. He digs until his hands bleed, until the hole is deep enough. You lay Margaret to rest yourself. You want to be the last person to touch her, to tuck the cloth around her one final time. You whisper all the prayers you know, mix them with prayers you make up on the spot. You tell her again that you love her. You tell her to rest now, to be at peace. You tell her you'll see her again someday, in heaven, where there's no sickness and no pain. You hope that's true. You need it to be true. Thomas fills in the grave while you turn away, unable to watch. When it's done, he finds a flat stone and sets it at the head. He carves her name into it with his knife, just Margaret. Because neither of you can manage more than that. You go back inside the cottage that's now missing one of its occupants. You look at John and Anne, still healthy, at least for now. You look at Thomas, who's aged a lifetime in 3 days. You look at your own hands, and they seem like someone else's hands. How do these hands keep moving? How does your heart keep beating when your daughter's has stopped? But it does. Your heart keeps beating. Your lungs keep breathing. Life, cruel and relentless, continues. The aftermath in your village, 1,500 words, 3 months after Margaret dies. Winter arrives early and bitter. By then, your village has been transformed into something unrecognizable. Of the 200 souls who lived here in that peaceful June morning before the plague came, perhaps 70 remain, maybe fewer. You've stopped counting. The physical landscape has changed. Empty cottages stand with their doors hanging open, roofs already beginning to sag from neglect. Some have been burned, as Emma's was, leaving charred patches where families once lived. Others are simply abandoned, their contents left to rot furniture, tools, even food sometimes, because the surviving relatives were too afraid to enter and claim what was rightfully theirs. The churchyard is a horror. Graves mounded everywhere, many unmarked. You know where Margaret lies, because you visit her every day. But most of the dead are in the mass pits beyond the village, covered in lime and earth. Hundreds of bodies, your neighbors, your friends, children you watched grow up, elders who seemed like they'd always been here, permanent as the church itself. All gone, buried together in unholy jumbles that would have scandalized everyone just months ago. You walk through the village and see ghosts everywhere. There's the spot where Mary used to sit and shell peas, talking about her children. All dead now, her entire family. There's the bench where old Agnes held court, dispensing wisdom and gossip. She died in her locked cottage, and no one found her for a week. The baker's shop stands empty. He survived, but his wife and children didn't, and he walked away one day and never came back, couldn't bear to be here anymore. The survivors are changed too. Those who made it through carry the marks of what they've endured. Thomas has gone gray at his temples, though he's only 32. Your own face, when you catch a glimpse in the bucket of water, looks haggard and old. John, who was 4 when this started, has become quiet and clingy, afraid to let you out of his sight. Baby Anne, mercifully, is too young to remember life before Bud she grow up in a world shaped by this absence. Some survivors seem almost manic with their survival. Robert, who lost his wife and 3 children, has already remarried a widow from the next village, who lost her own family. They came together not from love, but from pure practicality and mutual desperation. They're trying for new children already, trying to replace what was lost, though you can see the grief in both their eyes that says those children will never truly be replaced. The social order of the village has collapsed in strange ways. William, who was a landless laborer before, now works 3 different plots because their owners are dead and have no heirs. He's not technically allowed to claim that land it belongs to the Lord, but who's going to stop him? The Lord's bailiff is dead. The reeve is dead. The structures that governed village life have simply evaporated. And here's the strange thing, the thing that makes you feel guilty even thinking about it. Some people are better off now than before. There's more land available, more resources. The commons aren't overcrowded anymore. Thomas has taken over a field from a neighbor who died childless. It's good land, better than what you had before. You're not starving, not struggling the way you were. The survival has brought a kind of terrible prosperity, but that prosperity tastes like ash in your mouth. You'd give it all back, every bit of land and grain and comfort, to have Margaret back, to have your village back the way it was, crowded and difficult, but alive, fully alive. The church has managed to get a new priest finally, Father Simon, a young man who seems overwhelmed by the scope of devastation he's walked into. He tries his best, conducting services for the shell-shocked survivors who still attend. But even he seems uncertain. He preaches about God's mysterious ways, about how the plague was a test or a punishment or a purification. But his words ring hollow when you look at the empty pews, at the spaces where entire families used to sit. There's anger in the village now, simmering beneath the surface. Anger at God for allowing this, anger at the church for failing to protect you. Some people have stopped attending services altogether, their faith shattered by watching their children die despite all their prayers. Others have become more fervent, almost desperate in their religiosity, as if doubling down on devotion will prevent another catastrophe. Stranger behaviors have emerged too. A group of men from the next village passed through last month, flagellants, who whipped themselves bloody, claiming the plague was punishment for humanity's sins, and only through suffering can you atone. They terrified John, and you sent him inside while they performed their grotesque ritual in the village square. Father Simon tried to send them away, but they stayed for 3 days, gathering followers, whipping themselves and each other until the ground was spattered with blood. And there's been scapegoating, whispers about who's to blame. Strangers are suspect. Anyone different is dangerous. You've heard terrible stories from travelers passing through, stories of wells being blamed for spreading poison, of outsiders being attacked or killed, of Jews being massacred in the cities because someone decided they must have caused this somehow. The plague has revealed not just physical vulnerability, but moral vulnerability too. Fear makes people monstrous. Your own marriage has changed in subtle ways. You and Thomas are closer in some respects. You survived this together, shared the worst thing imaginable, and that creates a bond that can't be broken. But you're also more distant. Sometimes you catch him staring at nothing, lost in memories or grief, and you can't reach him. Sometimes you know you're doing the same thing. You're both haunted by Margaret's absence, by the space she should occupy, by the future she should have had. You don't talk about it much. What is there to say? She's gone. Saying it aloud doesn't change anything. just makes the wound fresh again. So you exist in a kind of mutual understanding, sharing the burden of grief silently, each trying to be strong for the other while falling apart inside. The surviving children are precious beyond measure now. You're overprotective of John and Anne, you know that. You check them constantly for signs of fever. Won't let John play rough with the other boys, because what if he gets hurt? What if something happens? Thomas tells you gently that you need to let them live. Let them be children. But how can you, when you know how quickly they can be taken? The village tries to rebuild some semblance of normal life. There's a harvest to bring in, though with so few workers, it's a struggle. People help each other more now, out of necessity. The old feuds and grudges seem petty in light of what everyone has endured. You work alongside women you barely spoke to before, all of you bound by shared loss and the desperate need to prepare for winter. But something else is changing too, something that will take years to fully understand. With so many dead, the few who remain have leverage they never had before. Thomas mentions it one evening, talking about how the Lord's steward came to discuss the fields. The steward wanted Thomas to work extra land for the same terms as before. Thomas refused, said if the Lord wanted the land worked, he'd have to offer better conditions, higher wages, or the right to keep more of the harvest, or something. The steward threatened, but what could he actually do? There aren't enough workers left. If Thomas won't do it, who will? For the first time in his life, your husband has negotiating power. It's a strange, fragile kind of power, built on the corpses of your neighbors, but it's real. You see it elsewhere, too. The baker's apprentice, who survived when his master didn't, is demanding a share of the profits if he's to keep the bakery running. The blacksmith's helper wants ownership of the forge. Workers are asking for wages in coin, not just in kind. The whole economic structure of village life is shifting. Relationships that seemed permanent and fixed suddenly becoming negotiable. Some call it a silver lining. You hate that phrase. There's no lining, silver or otherwise, that makes losing Margaret worth it. But you can't deny that the world is changing. The old order, where peasants like you had no choice but to accept whatever conditions the Lord offered, is cracking. You don't know what will replace it, but it won't be the same as before. Nothing will ever be the same as before. You stand sometimes at the edge of the village, looking out at the fields and the woods beyond. You remember that June morning, that peaceful dawn when everything was normal and safe and predictable. That world is as dead as the people buried in the churchyard. You're living in something new now, something forged in plague and death and survival. You don't know if it's better or worse. It just is, and you're still here. Somehow, against odds that seemed impossible, you and Thomas and John and Anur still here. You survived. That has to mean something, though you're not sure what. What changed the world after 5 years after the plague swept through your village? You wake on a June morning that echoes that last peaceful dawn before everything changed. But you're not the same woman who woke that morning in 1348. The world isn't the same world, and the changes run deeper than just the empty cottages and the graves in the churchyard. Thomas is already up, sitting at the table that he built last winter, a proper table now, not just a plank across 2 supports. He's drinking ale from a ceramic cup, not the wooden one he used before. These small luxuries would have been impossible 5 years ago. Now they're simply what you have, what you can afford, because everything has changed. Your household has more land now, much more. The field Thomas took over from your dead neighbor was just the beginning. As more people died or fled, as the Lord's steward grew desperate for anyone willing to work the land, Thomas negotiated. He has a formal agreement now, written down by the new priest who replaced Father Simon when he moved to a larger parish. Thomas works 3 times the land he had before, but he keeps a much larger share of what he produces. Some he even sells at market for actual coin. This would have been unthinkable before the plague. Peasants didn't negotiate with lords. You worked the land you were given, under the terms you were given, and you were grateful to have it. But there aren't enough workers anymore. The plague killed perhaps 1/3 of England, maybe more. In your village, it was closer to 2/3. The survivors have something they never had before: choice. You've heard stories from travelers of peasants simply leaving their villages, walking away from lords who treated them poorly, finding work elsewhere with better terms. The old bonds of serfdom are weakening. Some lords try to enforce the old ways, but how? They need workers more than workers need any particular lord. The whole structure of society is shifting beneath everyone's feet. It's not just about land and labor. Everything costs more now because there are fewer people to make things. But wages are higher too for those who have skills. The blacksmith, not the old one who died, but the young man who took over his forge, charges 3 times what he used to. People grumble, but they pay, because what choice do they have? He's the only blacksmith for miles. You see it in the church, too. The new priest, Father Benedict, is young and uncertain. Nothing like the commanding presence Father Peter had. The church lost so many clergy during the plague priests because they tended to the sick, gave last rites, exposed themselves constantly. Now there aren't enough trained clergy to fill all the positions. Father Benedict barely knows Latin, and everyone can tell. But he's what you have, and the church is in no position to be choosy. Some people have lost their faith entirely. They watched their children die despite endless prayers, watched priests fall sick like everyone else, saw no divine intervention or mercy or justice in how the plague took people. The church says it was God's punishment for sin, but that explanation satisfies fewer people now than it once might have. If it was punishment, why did babies die? Why did devout old women die while drunkards survived? The logic doesn't hold, and people are starting to say so aloud. Others have gone the opposite direction, becoming intensely, desperately religious. There are more pilgrimages now, more extreme acts of devotion, more people giving everything they have to the church in hopes of securing salvation. Fear does that. It drives some people away from faith and others deeper into it. For you, faith is complicated. You still attend services, still pray, still cross yourself when you pass the churchyard. But it's mechanical now, habitual. You don't feel God's presence the way you used to believe you did. Maybe he's there, maybe he isn't. Either way, he didn't save Margaret, and you can't forget that. You go through the motions for the children, for Thomas, for the community. But your heart isn't in it anymore. John is 9 now, the age Margaret was when she died. He's growing tall and strong, learning to work alongside Thomas in the fields. He has opportunities Margaret never would have had. There's talk of apprenticing him to a craftsman in the town, maybe even sending him to learn to read and write. Before the plague, such things would have been impossible for a peasant's son. Now, with so many positions empty, so many masters desperate for apprentices, it's actually possible. Anne is 5, bright and wild and blessedly healthy. She doesn't remember the plague years, doesn't remember her sister. You've told her about Margaret, shown her the grave, but it's just a story to her. She has no memory of the fear, the death, the way the world felt like it was ending. In some ways, you envy her. In other ways, you're grateful. She gets to grow up in this new world without carrying the weight of the old one. You're pregnant again. It surprised you. You thought perhaps you were done with childbearing. But here you are, at 33, feeling the quickening of new life inside you. It terrifies you more than it did with the others, because now you know viscerally how quickly children can be lost. But it also feels like hope, like a defiant assertion that life continues, that creation persists even after devastation. Thomas is pleased about the baby, though he tries to hide his worry. You see it in his eyes when he looks at you, the fear that he could lose you in childbirth, lose this baby before it's even born. Death is no longer an abstract concept for any of you. It's familiar, intimate, always present in the back of your minds. The village itself is slowly rebuilding. Some of the empty cottages have new occupants, people from other villages that were hit even harder, drifting in search of land and opportunity. They're strangers, and there's tension sometimes, but mostly people are too exhausted and diminished to maintain old prejudices about outsiders. You need each other too much. There's a new energy in some ways too. Young people are marrying younger, having children faster, as if trying to replace the population that was lost. There's more mobility, more change. People talk about things they never would have discussed before, about fair wages, about rights, about what they're owed for their labor. It makes the older generation uncomfortable, this new boldness. But the older generation is much smaller than it used to be. You've heard rumors of uprisings in other parts of the country, of peasants banding together to demand better conditions, even refusing to work until their demands are met. It seems impossible, revolutionary. You can't imagine doing such a thing yourself, but you understand the impulse. The plague stripped away the illusion that the social order was natural and unchangeable. If death can come and devastate everything, regardless of rank or station, if lords are just as vulnerable as peasants when plague comes calling, then maybe the hierarchy isn't as fixed and God-ordained as everyone always said. Thomas talks sometimes about the future, about what life might be like for John and Anne, for this new baby. He imagines them having choices he never had, opportunities that seemed impossible before. Maybe John becomes a skilled craftsman, owns his own shop. Maybe Anne marries a merchant's son, lives in a town instead of a village. Maybe this new child becomes something neither of you can even imagine. It's strange to have hope again. For so long you lived day to day, just trying to survive, not daring to think beyond the next sunrise. But slowly, painfully, hope has crept back in. Not the innocent hope of that June morning in 1348. This is a harder hope, tempered by loss, aware of how fragile everything is. But it's hope nonetheless. The economic changes are real and tangible. You have more food, better clothing, a more comfortable home. The material conditions of your life have improved in ways that would have seemed impossible before. But you'd trade it all, every bit of land, every coin, every comfort, to have Margaret back. The cost of this new prosperity was too high. It will always be too high. Still, you can't help but notice that your surviving children will inherit a different world. One where peasants have more power, more options, more voice. One where the old certainties have been shaken loose. The feudal system that seemed eternal and unchangeable is cracking, slowly but visibly. It will take generations to fully collapse. But the plague was the beginning of the end. You don't know if that makes the deaths meaningful. You don't think suffering and loss ever really mean anything, no matter how historians might frame it centuries from now. Margaret's death didn't serve a purpose. It wasn't noble or necessary or part of some grand design. She died because a terrible disease swept through and killed her. Random and cruel and pointless, but the world did change. That's simply true. The plague broke something in the old order, and what's emerging from the wreckage is different, maybe even better in some ways. Though you'll never be able to celebrate that without thinking of what it cost. You place your hand on your belly, feeling the baby move inside you. This child will be born into a world Margaret never got to see. A world shaped by plague and death and survival. A world where change is possible, where the future isn't predetermined by the circumstances of your birth. It's not the world you would have chosen, but it's the world you have, and somehow you're still here to see it. The long shadow closing reflection, 1,500 words. You wake before dawn, as you always have, to the sound of roosters and your husband's gentle breathing beside you. The straw mattress crackles as you rise. It's a June morning in 1353. 5 years, almost to the day, since that last peaceful morning before the plague came. And for a moment, just a moment, you let yourself remember what it felt like to wake up in a world that felt safe. The cottage is quiet. Thomas sleeps on, his face peaceful in the dim light filtering through the shutters. Beside him, the new baby Catherine, named for your grandmother, breathes softly in her cradle. John and Anne are tangled together on their pallet near the hearth, the way children sleep, all sprawled limbs and open mouths. For this one quiet moment, everyone you love is here, breathing, alive. You know better than to take it for granted now. You rise carefully, trying not to wake anyone, and step outside into the cool morning air. The village is still asleep, though you can see smoke beginning to rise from a few chimneys. Fewer chimneys than there used to be. So many cottages still stand empty, though more have been filled in the past year than before. Life is returning, slowly, cautiously, like green shoots pushing through scorched earth. You walk the familiar path to the small plot behind your cottage, to the flat stone Thomas carved 5 years ago. Margaret, the stone has weathered some, moss growing in the carved letters. You kneel beside it, as you do most mornings, and let yourself feel the grief that never really goes away. It's duller now, less sharp, worn smooth by time and repetition, but it's always there, a permanent ache in your chest. Good morning, sweetheart, you whisper to the grave. Your baby sister is doing well. She smiled yesterday, a real smile. You would have loved her. You tell her other things, too. about John learning his letters, about Anne's latest adventure, about the pregnancy going well so far. You tell her about the world she's missing, even though you don't believe she can hear you. Maybe you do it for yourself, to keep her present somehow, to maintain the connection that death severed but didn't entirely break. The sun is rising now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It's beautiful, and that feels wrong somehow. How can the world be beautiful when so much has been lost? But it is beautiful, and you're here to see it. And that has to mean something. You think about all the others who didn't survive. Mary and her whole family. Old Agnes, Emma and her children. Father, Peter, the baker, the miller, the blacksmith. Hundreds of people from your village alone. Millions across Europe. All those lives, all those stories, all that potential erased, as if they never existed, except they did exist. They mattered. Mary's kindness when you were struggling with a new baby. Old Agnes's sharp wit and sharper wisdom. Emma's terrible singing voice that made everyone laugh. They were here, they were real, and even though they're gone, they shaped the world and the people in it. You carry them with you, in memories, in habits they taught you, in the ways they changed you, just by existing alongside you. The survivors carry scars too. Not everyone who lived through the plague stayed sane. Robert, who lost his entire first family, drinks too much now. His new wife tries to help him, but some wounds don't heal. Joan never remarried after losing her daughter. She lives alone and talks to herself, conversations with ghosts only she can see. William is shunned by everyone who heard his wife's screams. He works his expanded fields alone, wealthy by peasant standards, but utterly isolated. You've watched your own children carefully for signs of damage. John has nightmares sometimes, waking up screaming about death coming for him. Anne seems fine, but she's so young, who knows what memories she carries that she can't articulate. You try to give them as normal a childhood as possible. Try to let them play and laugh and be children. But you also prepare them, teach them that the world is dangerous, that nothing is guaranteed, that everyone they love could be gone tomorrow. It's a terrible lesson to teach children, but it's true, and they need to know it. The village has rebuilt in practical ways, cottages repaired, fields worked, a new generation starting to grow. But the community itself feels different, thinner somehow. The deep roots that bound people together. Generations of shared history and mutual obligation were damaged by the plague years. Trust eroded when neighbors refused to help each other, when people fled, leaving others to die, when survival meant abandoning the social bonds that had always held society together. You're rebuilding that too, slowly, helping neighbors with harvests, sharing food when someone's stores run low, coming together for weddings and baptisms. The rituals of community continue because they must, because humans are social creatures and need each other to survive. But there's a wariness now that wasn't there before. Everyone knows now that when real terror comes, many people will choose self-preservation over solidarity. You can't unknow that Father Benedict leads the village in prayer each Sunday. And you attend, and you recite the words you've known since childhood. But prayer feels different now. You're not sure who you're talking to, or if anyone is listening. Maybe God is there, vast and unknowable, beyond human understanding. Maybe the plague was some kind of test, or trial, or cleansing, as the Church claims. Maybe it was just disease, random and meaningless, the way Thomas thinks. You don't know. You'll never know. And you've made peace with not knowing. What you do know is this: you survived. Against odds that seemed impossible, watching death take people all around you. Somehow you survived. Thomas survived. 2 of your 4 children survived. That's more than many people can say. The baker's widow would trade places with you in a heartbeat. She lost everyone. Survivor's guilt is real and heavy. Why did you live when so many died? What made you special or deserving? The answer, you've come to understand, is nothing. You're not special. You weren't more deserving. You just got lucky, if you can call it luck. The plague took who it took and spared who it spared, and there was no pattern, no justice, no reason to it, but you're here. And being here means you have responsibilities. To your living children, to Thomas, to this new baby growing inside you, to Margaret's memory, to the village that's trying to rebuild, to the future that's emerging from the ashes of the old world. Some days, the weight of that feels crushing. Some days, you want to curl up in bed and never move again, overwhelmed by grief and memory and the sheer exhaustion of continuing to exist after everything you've endured. But you get up anyway. You make bread, you tend children, you work the fields. You go through the motions of living because that's what survivors do. And some days not many, but some you feel something that might be joy. Watching and chase chickens, her laughter bright in the morning air. Feeling the baby kick inside you. Proof of life continuing. Thomas's hand finding yours in the darkness. Both of you still here, still together. These moments don't erase the grief, but they exist alongside it. Joy and sorrow, hope and despair, life and death, all mixed together, inseparable. The plague taught you that life is fragile and precious and temporary, that everyone you love could be gone tomorrow, that the world can change overnight, that everything you think is solid and permanent can dissolve in weeks. These are terrible lessons. Lessons you wish you'd never had to learn, but you also learned that humans are resilient in ways you never imagined, that communities can be shattered and still rebuild, that hope can survive even the darkest times, that love persists even after death, that you're stronger than you ever thought possible, even when you feel utterly broken. The sun is fully up now. You hear stirring from the cottage, Thomas waking, the baby fussing. Soon the day will begin in earnest, with all its demands and routines and small moments of beauty and struggle. You stand, brushing dirt from your knees, and take one last look at Margaret's grave. "I love you," you whisper, "always." Then you turn and walk back toward the cottage, toward your living family, toward the day ahead. The past is heavy, but the present demands your attention. You have bread to bake, children to feed, a life to live. It's not the life you imagined in that innocent June morning in 1348, but it's your life, hard-won and precious, and you're still here to live it. The plague years cast a long shadow, and you'll never fully emerge from it. But you've learned to walk in shadow and light, both carrying your dead with you while nurturing the living. It's not the ending you would have chosen for this story, but it's the ending you have, and somehow impossibly, painfully, beautifully it's enough. Thank you for listening to this story from 1348. If it moved you, consider sharing it with someone who loves history told with heart. Remember the millions who didn't survive, and honor them by living fully loving deeply, and cherishing every ordinary morning you wake up, surrounded by people you love. And as always, sleep well.
And so we come to the end of tonight's story. Thank you truly for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Leave a like if this helped you relax, and share it with anyone who might need a peaceful night's rest. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of Genghis Khan's story stayed with you the most? What would you like to explore in future episodes? Your voice matters here. Now, let go of the day. Let go of everything that doesn't serve you in this moment. The step is quiet, the wind is soft, and sleep is waiting for you, gentle and warm. Good night, dear listener. Rest well, and I'll see you in the next story.